Madam President.
The senior senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today in opposition to Republican efforts to nullify the Department of Labor's rule that protects retirees and affirms decades of precedent. This rule allows those investing retirees' savings the freedom to direct those funds where the retirees want them to go. It lets them protect those funds from costly risks posed by worsening environmental disasters or unsafe and unfair working conditions and seek out promising, sustainable, long-term investment opportunities. Republicans' latest front in their wholly made-up culture war is an attack on quote-unquote woke capitalism, and American retirees are apparently their targets. In particular, Republicans have set their sights on retirees who choose to invest their money with environmental, social, and governance, ESG, factors in mind. Now, investors have actually been doing this for decades. The Department of Labor has repeatedly said that under the Employment Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, known as ERISA, retirement plan managers may consider all relevant economic factors when making investment decisions if it's in the best interests of the plan's participants. That includes ESG factors like how a company treats its workers or whether the company is sufficiently protected from climate risks and whether the company respects human rights. And it turns out investors really want to know these things. You don't need to be a financial wizard to realize that whether a company invests in its workers or is vulnerable to climate risks might be relevant to the company's long-term prospects and the potential returns on your investment. But the Trump administration put blinders on investors when, in 2020, it finalized a rule limiting that and made it harder for retirees to invest with ESG considerations in mind. Now, in 2024, the Biden administration, Department of Labor, rightfully removed these roadblocks and affirmed that retirement fiduciaries have the obligation to consider ESG factors when making investments on behalf of retirees. Let's be very clear about what this rule does not do. It does not mandate anything. It does not require that fiduciaries invest or not invest in certain funds. It does not tell fiduciaries to consider or not to consider certain factors. There is nothing new here, and certainly nothing extreme. Let's be clear. By overturning the Department of Labor's rule, Republicans want to tie investors' hands and override the free market. This fight isn't about protecting and strengthening America's retirement security. It's not about ensuring that retirement plan fiduciaries are making sound financial investments. And it sure as heck is not about capitalism. It's politics, plain and simple. And how do I know that? Well, Republicans clearly believe that investment decisions should be made with consideration of ESG factors so long as they are ESG factors that the Republicans support. My colleague, Senator Rubio, has championed legislation that would prevent the federal government's employees' retirement assets from being invested in Chinese and Russian companies. At the same time, Republicans also seem to believe that government shouldn't restrict investors' ability to put their money wherever they want. So in response to the Department of Labor's very sensible guidance, warning about the financial risks of investing in crypto scams, my colleague, Senator Tuberville, introduced a bill that would prohibit any guidance that would limit the type of investments that workers can make. He said, quote, "The government has no business standing in the way of retirement savers who want to make their own investment choices." So add up what the Republicans have already told us with the legislation that they are sponsoring. Retirees should have the freedom to invest their hard-earned money in crypto scams, but they should not even be allowed to consider whether a company relies on child labor or is polluting the planet or is underpaying its workers when deciding whether or not an investment is sustainable. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's not supposed to. There is a bigger picture here that Americans need to understand. Republicans know that President Biden will veto this resolution the minute it hits his desk. They know it won't succeed in nullifying the Department of Labor's rule. So what is the point of doing this? Well, Republicans have been explicit that the goal of this exercise is to help their buddies in the courts. President Trump appointed judges across the country who are now engaged in a disturbing assault on the regulatory state and are hell-bent on kneecapping any efforts to make markets fairer, to make workers safer, and to make the environment cleaner. This resolution is just one more attempt by Republicans to give an assist to these extremist judges and make it easier for the courts to overturn the rule and undermine the law. Let's call this attack on the Department of Labor's rule what it really is: a wholly invented grievance to advance corporate special interests, not the interests of retirees. Democrats need to stick together on this and reject these cynical efforts to undermine investor protection and empower extremist Republican courts. Thank you, and I yield the floor.
Madam President,